Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen. Pronago here, even moving his microphone closer to his face instead of waiting until the start of the video recording. I always do that beforehand. What are you talking about? Bringing you another Cosmonarchy cast. And we got Grass Eater versus AUD64, which I think is going to be a fun game. Of course, Grass Eater does change his ID in-game every single match, just about. I know he technically will hold on to one for like 3 or 4 games. I don't know if it's like until he wins and then he changes it or something. You know, he wants a loss-only account all the time. I'm not really entirely sure what his game plan is. Maybe it's just by vibes and by feel. But eventually we will get to a point where I assume a Zerg player with around 120, 130 APM is going to be Grass Eater, and then I will be wrong, and it'll actually be like a new player, and I'm just calling him Grass Eater the whole time, kind of shit-talking him for changing his name. And that one guy will be like, huh? And then just leave the server, leave the community, just never play with us again because of Grass Eater. So hands up for Grass Eater, you know, put your hands together, give a round of applause for continuing to be a goofball. He is in the bottom right as our, I'm going to say, this is where I become a goofball, but I'm going to say Redwood Zerg. Oh, it was Redwood. Okay. That's a hard color to guess, but maybe I'm getting a little bit better at it. Going for a Larvosk into a pool up by the cliff there, the ramp into his base. And Ayud in the top left is our Blood Summon. No, just kidding. Not yet. Blood Protoss. Going for a Lattice into Road Gallery. All right. I picked a couple of matches out here from the last few bits, and one of the players that is still in our Throne Room stage as of the time of recording is AUD64. Now, by the end of today, my recording day, we will decide if he is still in the tournament and whether he moves on to rematch Siki in a grand final. But on the off chance he does, that means we would be in for PVZ grand final goodness, and I want to see how AUD is handling the matchup. Of course, he did say something about the calculus being annoying in the beginning of the game chat. I have no idea if that's... I mean, they played a bunch of games, so maybe there was something there where Grass Eater was trying a couple of different strategies or something, but right about now, it looks bog standard, right? Larvosk pool into the second Larvosk. I will say the SimCity is always a little bit interesting about Grass Eater. He does do that, you know, pool by the ramp thing. I don't know where he learned it or if he came up with it himself, but I feel like I saw one other player doing it. It might have been Turtle at one point, but Art of Turtle. And a Starcraft 1 player turned Cosmonarch. I guess technically he's still a Starcraft 1 player, but you know what I mean. Once a Starcraft 1 player, always a Starcraft 1 player to some degree. And the idle walkout is pretty interesting from Ayud. I feel like this is almost destined to get owned, as we are about to see in action right now. Grass Eater flexing his legs, and he'll use that burrow trap to great effect. Now, we have to deal with ye old Zethrakor. Or as Alex would say, Zethrocker. Shout out my man Alex Gaming on YouTube, who casts with yours truly all the time. Problem is, the Kabbalist just got spotted here since it was lazily on the rally, and so now there will be ample time to grab an Ovaleth here for Grass Eater. There will be ample time to grab an Ovaleth here for Grass Eater. I guess he just doesn't care. He's like, no, I'm going to keep my units at home instead of trying to pressure this fast Nexus. Okay. Well, however he wants to do it, he has his own game plan, I am sure. But obviously, if I'm in that situation as the Protoss player, I'm like, well, my Kabbalist ain't going to do nothing. Still should arrive just in time to see the expansion, but not in time to actually kill the Droleth. It's questionable. I mean, Potidaea is a map by BDB, first of all, and also a map that has a pretty lengthy walk distance to itself. So I do have to wonder what the antic will end up being overall. Because maybe if the Kabbalist just rallied across the map, that could have been, oh no, he didn't actually walk through the ramp, or rather wall the ramp with his units. This looks really deadly, though. I mean, yeah, he's going to get a worker kill here, but the Ovaleth is in production. I think maybe he's destined to only get one more if he wants it. It really depends on whether or not he suspects an Ovaleth is incoming. No, he should be good for another. If he wants to sack the Kabbalist, he can get one more. In fact, he might even try to get out of here. Since you don't care too much about the Ovaleth, like the Ovaleth detects you, right? So you could even try to, like, jump to another unit. The Zeths were just kind of out in the middle of nowhere. That's going to be a healthy number of Droleths slain. That's 3 dead workers for the Zerg. But Ayud did obviously have to spend some APM about that. Obviously, Grass Eater should spend some resources about that. He just chooses to make a lot more workers. And that's protective static defense inside the main base, as well as a Warden over here as a bit of a linchpin for the natural. Interestingly enough, there was a pylon made. Sometimes I feel like, particularly if it's kind of like an instinct check, a little bit different than a knowledge check, because everybody by this point who plays Cosmonarchy at the level that these two do, who plays Cosmonarchy at the frequency that these two do, know that the Nexus is a power field. But, you know, it's just, like, instinctive. Like, your brain sees a pylon and you want to snipe it instead of the static defense, and then obviously the Nexus keeps it powered. So I wonder about that. 16 Zethar cores hanging out at 12 o'clock, waiting to see what else they can get done with their short life spans. The Kalkir Lake on the way. Maybe Grass Eater are going to be using this as an opportunity to be annoying with Calculusks again. They'll threaten the run-by. Kabbalist will score himself another kill. There's actually a second one in here. Do love myself some epic Kabbalist action. It's funny, Ayud thought I was trolling earlier when I said Charlatan Kabbalist annihilates Ultra Core. The problem is, you know, I did even say after that, like, good luck, you know, keeping your units alive following that, of course. But, you know, if there's Lake is around, you're probably going to struggle. But, hey, Ultra Cores do suck against Charlatan Cabalists. Check it out, dude. Fire up the unit tester. People were joking. I think it was Shopkeeper Dog, actually, was saying, like, as soon as Ayud figures out where the unit tester is and how to use it, we're all screwed because, you know, fear his mechanics, shall we say. But obviously struggling on the side of assembling a different sort of composition, right? We frequently look at Ayud's compositions and say, is he experimenting? Is he wildin'? Well, bunch of Zethar cores flooding the map. It's a lot of military units here for Grass Eater, and he did rebuild a healthy number of workers, so pretty even eco here. Obviously, the army composition from Ayud should be sufficient in dealing with a number of these Zeths and other pool units. What is that, 26 Zeths? We got loads of Lyra coming. So the Lyralisks have a bounce attack. In theory, going to be pretty good against what Ayud has, because they have the mobility to just kind of run up, shoot, and then fall back. But Ayud's not going for an expansion blindly here, right? He does have units at the natural, so no Zeth run-by can be had. He has his units guarding the forward third. This is a position where you are definitely going to want to use more of the static defense structures that the Protoss have if you want to just defend against the torrential tides of Zerg. Keeping up the pace, Ayud obviously spending down some of his money. We do have those Calculusks on the way, though. And the Agrolith here for, I didn't comment on it earlier, but the Agrolith is indeed on display for all to see for Grass Eater. I would love to see him actually bring like a Drolith with him and just start putting down static defense or something. Eventually at tier 2 you can hit the inimitable Nidus. But I don't think we're going to see that in this game. Not only because it's rare, but also because we might be coming to a head nice and early. The Lyralisks charging forward and trying their best to clear this position. The Pylon providing that power before the Nexus finishes up, and the Warden doing what it can. The Lyra's kind of focusing down the units off to the right-hand side, while the Nexus, well, it's going to be defended by that Warden. Did a lot of damage, and the Charlatan count is pretty high itself. Somehow, all of them staying alive until, of course, that last moment where a Quasilisk regressed from a Lyra and finished the job. Down will that Vorv egg go. Workers transferring down. The Nexus a little bruised, but not too bad, not too shabby. And of course we have more Lyra being made. Third base now coming for the Zerg. I feel like that attack needed to do more damage, right? And I've seen this from Grass Eater in particular. He's going to come in with the Calculus to try to get some damage dealt. But of course the Matrix and the Warden are going to be enough to convince them to go elsewhere with their troubles, and this will now put Ayud on notice. Something that I see from Zerg players, maybe Grass, maybe George, you know, those class 3 Zergs in particular, I feel like that's sort of our, not our worst rank, but it's of the best, the worst, if you know what I mean. And they do have that indecision about what to target. The Lyras weren't focusing down the Nexus, they were fighting the army. The Zeth Vorv was not fighting the army, they were trying to kill the Nexus, and a Warden's killing them the whole time, Charlatans are debuffing them the whole time. Now we've got more reinforced positions here. This is a map where it feels like it should be almost impossible for Protoss to secure a third base easily in this position. You can attack this particular one so easily, including cutting off reinforcements from the main base, but that is not what Grass Eater is doing. However, he will be trying to be a little bit of a heckler here against the Protoss, the Nexus power field, allowing some extra Wardens to come up. That probably does seal the deal for now. Azorka's Shroud halfway complete tells us we are going to see a tech switch, but Agrolith has already made the Eskagan, and I think he's stuck behind there, funnily enough. I mean, maybe a regular worker could wrap around, I'm not entirely sure, but yeah. Where's your Avaleth, buddy? You might need to go ahead and send it over that way. Yep, indeed he does. So we have the 6 Drolith waiting to size it up. Vorvs being made, macro hatches coming up inside the main base for our Zerg player, recalling his Lyra flock to the front line of his own base. And yeah, slowly saturating up extra spots here. Obviously, Aoud having a much nicer time economically, and we can see that reflected in the tech. He's going to pop the Warden to free his Golem. I'm assuming his Golem actually could have come out there earlier anyway. It just was on a weird rally. But the Prostration Stage, the Unitary Union, the, of course, very important Crucible to empower that extra production. It's kind of a slapdash base placement, right? We got Tier 1 and 2 Tier 2 structures here for Aoud. He's got another Tier 2 one down here with the Rogue Gallery, and then he's got his Tier 3 production structures coming online inside the Natural. So the Crucible will also empower some static defense here, making it pretty efficient versus any would-be angles. And I can sort of see what Aoud's game plan is on Potidaea in particular. Taking this as a quadrant of bases starts to make a little bit more sense in terms of, you know, this is the hard one to take, this one is a little bit easier to defend. We saw actually Nebline versus Hamster, this sort of same dynamic happening over here. And the Zerg are going to commit onto that, we'll say 10 o'clock position. The Calculist's trying to heckle some of these spots. The Nexus is going to be canceled, and we will end up seeing a nice impingement here from Aoud, but his growth has been slowed. A lot of money in the bank for the Zerg. Not actually too interested, it seems, in going after the military production. He's just focused on actually attacking. Feels like a pretty big missed opportunity. The Lakes are out, a dozen of them, but certainly currently focused on a Pariah, dealing a lot of splash damage there, getting almost 3 full attacks off. Can Aoud actually break through all of those? So many of them were brutally bruised. And now we see that production tab come to life for Grass Eater moments too late to reinforce this push. Aoud holding strong. That engagement looked really sick. I did not expect it to work out that way. Scribe did end up remaking the Nexus, so not as slow as maybe we were fearing. Obviously, Grass Eater ticking 6 o'clock as he goes for the Hydrith Den. And 34 Lyra, that's going to be the heavy hitters that he tries to use to keep the Protoss off of him, off his back, while he spends down his considerable bank. 8 Lake has just hit the deck as well, so we'll see a re-up on that front. Vibrance is alive, and this cloaked boy can walk into this mineral line and start damaging stuff. You can pair it with a witness for detection to, you know, it releases a pulse attack, but it needs to see each target, right? So it's pretty nifty in that respect. A lot of static defense being set up down here at that 10 o'clock base. I'd love to see a 5th base for Aoud, but really right now what he needs is more production, and you can tell that he's aware of it. Ardent Authorities and a Grand Library, even a Gateway, just to spend down his mineral bank, it looks like. Now, whatever you do, don't try to put a Crucible here. You'll stuck every unit behind that. Love the double ridge cap over here. This turns it effectively into a base with double Vespene gas. Double Vespene geysers. You can kind of think of it as that because the ridges count as a geyser when capped. Static defense being set up here for the Zerg, but it feels like it doesn't do nearly enough damage to the Protoss armies to be as fitting, particularly when you're only making one at a time with the Agrolith, you know what I mean? So he's going to start setting up some more down at 6 o'clock, getting his ridge cap. No tier 2 in sight right now for our Zerg player. At the same time, the Protoss is hemming and hawing about going for tier 4. They're sticking to the idea of Unars for the Ultra Core, Pariahs for the front line, and getting some Ecclesiasts for even more shield sustain. I'm supposing a Clarion, yep, will indeed be coming. The Vibrances are going to be so obnoxious for the Zerg to deal with the current tech tree that they have. Bactyls are coming up, but the Vibrance has so much armor and sustain when firing that it feels like this is not really going to end very well. Down the Hatrask will go. The Escagant is also going to be taken out, and that is a pretty big flatline for the Zerg economy. He can go ahead and take a hatch in the bottom left, but he's setting up a bunch of Bactyls. He's setting up the Lakes. He's got some Zorius on the front line finally to reduce the armor and attack speed of the Protoss, but at this point I feel like he's setting up for a tightening of the noose. Aoud 64 pushing in, felt like he was in control of this game the whole time. A different look because the Zerg are typically a bit more aggressive than what Grass Eater was bringing, and then when the aggression came, it was a little bit less effective than Aoud was expecting it to be, and he comfortably moved on to a pretty staunch push. Now, he's lost most of his heavy frontline units. At the same time, he's made the Zerg bleed a lot of what they had. You do have to be a little bit careful here because the lake is count still at 6, can definitely do a number on you. Bulwark and Warden added, you know, just strengthening the position. Yeah, this is how you expand as Protoss. We solved it, boys. I do unironically think static defense is enormously important in Cosmonarchy, PvZ. These kinds of run-bys are not actually something we see too often, and as Zergs have gotten better, they've gotten more active in using them. So putting down a lot of static defense, something that isn't going to make your army that understrength as long as you pace it properly, should work out pretty nicely for you. But there's a point where it gets a little silly. 18 Lake is in production, will not be a part of the fight. AUD-64's shield composition with a Clarion, enduring all of that pummeling done by the Bactals. But the Pariah is one of the last standing frontliners. The Amaranths trying to sustain through as well with the help of the Vibrants, and I guess there were some Ecclesiasts in there earlier. Finally, that Pariah will go down, but at the cost of all the Lake is, he needs to scramble the ones that just popped in order to get over here. 4 Ultras only just now starting, and 24 Hydras in production. The Bactals are not going to fend this attack off. They've got 1 active Lake is left. The Zoryus will try their best to keep the enemy off of the position, but those Ultra Cores are only halfway done, and I feel like that's going to be way too hard for Grass Eater to withstand. He even has a couple Calculists trying to shut down 12 o'clock, but that's the 5th base for the Protoss. Up a base once that gets saturated. The production tab tells everything you need to know here. Yeah, sure, 21 Bactals are good. Great even, but where's the armor pen? Where's the beef to actually back it up? The Unars can focus down individual Ultra Cores. The Cantors can clear any swarming push that you can try to imagine, and that's the last Calc gone. Progressing into a Nath, which is going to be way less efficient. At the very least, Aoud seems to have abated his strike force, just in case he's needed to head off some kind of attack. But the Ultra Core is getting caught. Oh no! The Charlatans providing even more projectiles for those Acantors, and it feels like that's way too much. I felt like this for some time, but it looks like Grass Eater's going to get routed in a big way here as he starts to abate back to his 3rd forward position that was already called a long time ago by Aoud's forces. And he's just back to a pretty mixed Tier 1 army. No extra tech developed here. No Tethzora cores, no Zarkavra cores, and nothing in Tier 2 for our Zerg to contend with this pretty heavy Tier 2, Tier 3 push that Aoud has come up with. Even filtering in those Ecclesiasts with the Amaranth, some Zealots occasionally spending down his mineral bank. 13 Skits are in production, but surely Grass Eater sees the writing on the wall. He's got next to nothing here. And with witnesses provided, that detection is going to be more than what is actually necessary. You could just step on individual Lakes by this point, particularly with the shield sustain that the army has. Workers transferring over to that 12 o'clock out of depleted bases. Aoud just getting all of his mechanics in form before playing later today. Of course, as of the day of recording. Maybe we'll put this video live on the day of the grand final, and then you guys can just hope for Protoss victory here. But the Gorga Cores on rally, they're just getting shellacked off of the initial rip. And a Cantor Unar squad with the intention of holding back reinforcements might just do it. The Cantors are going to get on top of them. Well, the Gorga Cores are doing some pretty good splash damage, but now the rest of the army is here. A Cabalist on cleanup duty. And I really don't think Grass Eater's going to be able to pull this one out of the hat. He's got no counter damage done. He's only losing units at the end of the day. The cost efficiency, besides all of that, artillery loss is way more than Grass Eater could handle. Aoud, a very comfortable win. All right, well, we saw the writing on the wall for a little while there, but nonetheless, it was cool to see some Protoss strutting to victory. We don't get to see that often in this matchup. So I thank you for joining us for Cosmonarchy's continued glory, and we will be back with more casts daily. So subscribe if you're not already. We recently passed 3,000 subs, and I am appreciative. I'll do something special at 3,333. Let's get there.